your hand in mine, a love so true, it stands through time. Every heartbeat, every gentle sigh feels like magic when you're by my side. No matter where the road may lead, you're the only one I need. You and me, forever in the stars. No matter how near or far, with every touch, with every kiss, you're the love I can't resist. Like a melody, you fill my soul, a perfect song that makes me whole. Through the rain and through the fire, you're the dream, my one desire. No matter where the road may lead, you're the only one I need. You and me, forever in the stars. No matter how near or far, with every touch, with every kiss, you're the love I can't resist. Through every tear, through every fight, I'll hold you close, I'll make it right. You're my sunrise, my sweetest view. Every day I fall for you. Final you, forever in the stars. No matter how near or far, with every touch, with every kiss, you're the love I can't resist. I've been walking through a quiet storm, holding pieces of a heart once warm, trying to smile when the lights go down. But I'm tired of pretending I'm not breaking now. They say be strong, you'll find your way, but I've been lost more than I can say. Each day I wear a face that's brave, but deep inside I just wanna be safe. Take me to a place where I can breathe, where my silence turns into melody, where love's not earned but just belongs, where I can fall and still be strong. I'm still searching all along for somewhere I belong. Oh, oh. I try to fit into their frame, shrank myself to please the game. But I was made for deeper skies, not dimmed down just to survive. And maybe I'm broken, that's okay. even diamonds crack and fade. But there's a light I haven't lost, still burns in me, no matter the cost. Take me to a place where I can breathe, where pain and beauty both can lead, where every scar becomes a song, and even ghosts can sing along. I've been hurting all too long, but I still believe I belong. Somewhere in the quiet, somewhere in the song, I'll find my home. Somewhere I belong, somewhere I belong. I was a shadow in a crowd, fading fast, trying to laugh like I meant it, but the moments never last. You came in like the first light after rain, pulled me out of the silence, healed the pain. Now the nights don't feel so long since you turned my broken into song. All I needed was you, just your voice in the dark, like a lighthouse on fire. You lit up my heart. No more drifting, no more lies. I found the truth in your eyes. I was lost, but you pulled me through. All I needed was you. You don't try to fix the storm, just stand in it with me. Every scar that I carry, you call it poetry. You saw colors where I saw gray, and now I'm learning to stay. 'Cause when the world feels out of tune, you bring me back with just one tune. All I needed was you, just your voice in the dark, like a lighthouse on fire. You lit up my heart. No more drifting, no more lies. I found the truth in your eyes. I was lost, but you pulled me through. All I needed was you. We don't have to be perfect, baby. We're the mess that makes us brave. And every fall we take together is a memory we save. All I needed was you. No fancy words or gold, just a hand that held mine when the nights got cold. No more running from the light. You make everything feel right. I was lost, but you pulled me through. Yeah, all I needed was you. I was fine in the silence, built my walls out of fear, but you showed up like a sunrise, wiped away every tear. You didn't rush the moment, you just let me breathe. Now I'm standing in your stillness, and I don't wanna leave. It's not the grand confessions or the roses on the floor. It's the way you say good morning, like I've never heard before. When you say my name, it don't sound the same. You make it feel like home, like I'm never alone. You don't need to try, you don't need the fame. me open every time you say my name. We've had nights full of thunder, fights we couldn't hide, but you held me in the silence, not needing to be right.
You don't ask for perfection, just a heart that's true. Even on my worst days, I still run to you.
And I used to be afraid to fall, scared to lose it all, but now I'd rather lose myself than never love at all. When you say my name, it don't sound the same. You make it feel like home, like I'm never alone. You don't need to try, you don't need the fame. You just break me open every time you say my name. Every time you say my name. When the world fades away and it's just you and me, I can hear your heartbeat like a soft melody. Every moment with you feels like a dream so true. There's no place I'd rather be than right here with you. Through the storms and through the rain, love like ours will never change. Only you can make me fly, lift me higher than the sky. In your arms I feel alive, love so deep it never dies. Only you can light my way, turn the night into the day. With your love I found my home, never have to be alone. Every touch, every kiss sets my heart on fire. You're the spark, you're the flame, you're my one desire. Even when the seasons change, our love will still remain. Hand in hand we'll write our story, never fade away. No matter where this life may go, I'll be with you just so you know. Only you can make me fly, lift me higher than the sky. In your arms I feel alive, love so deep it never dies. Only you can light my way, turn the night into the day. With your love I found my home, never have to be alone. So hold me close and don't let go. With every heartbeat love will grow. Forevermore, just you and me. Only you, my destiny. I used to walk these streets alone, counting stars through cracked up phones. Every dream felt far away, till you looked at me that way. I was good at hiding scars, laughing loud but falling hard. Then you said you don't have to run, and I knew my search was done. You don't try to change my past, you just make this moment last. In your eyes I finally see who I was meant to be. 'Cause love is only where you are, in every near and every far. When the world feels cold and blue, my forever starts with you. If tomorrow breaks apart, I'll still be holding your heart. No matter where life pulls us through, my only home is you. We don't need the perfect lines, just slow dances, wasted time. Coffee cups at 2 a.m., talking like the world might end. Every fear I never said, you can read it on my breath. When you hold me close like this, I believe in every wish. You don't promise skies of gold, just a hand I'll always hold. And somehow that's everything that love was meant to bring. 'Cause love is only where you are, in every near and every far. When the world feels cold and blue, my forever starts with you. If tomorrow breaks apart, I'll still be holding your heart. No matter where life pulls us through, my only home is you. If the lights go out tonight and we're lost without a sign, I won't be afraid to fall as long as you're my own. Through the storms and through the fire, every doubt, every desire, I don't need the perfect view, I just need you. 'Cause love is only where you are, written in my beating heart. Every road I ever knew leads me back to you. If the world forgets our names, I'll still call you mine the same. No matter what we go through, my only home is you. Only where you are, that's where love is true. Only where you are, that's where love is true.
In a quiet little town where the mountains kiss the skies, he made dreams with paper wings and watched them learn to fly. She came like a whisper with sorrow in her eyes, carrying a broken heart and stories left behind. But the wind, oh the wind, it brought her close again, like a song that finds its rhyme after years lost in the rain. Love was in the silence, in every kite he'd send. the gift of the wind. He gave her colors, paint, hid skies on tiny frames, told her even broken things can learn to dance with flame. Slowly she remembered how to dream and feel and draw. She painted both their hearts beneath a sky of awe. And the wind, oh the wind, it sang their names so clear through the fields across the time. It whispered she'll be near. She stood with teary eyes. The wind had heard his cry. And the wind, oh the wind, had never let them go. It carried all the love they shared through every gust and flow. Two hearts had been calling, now finally they begin. Of the wind. Yes, she was the gift of the wind. I try to let you go, but your voice still stays like a whisper in my mind I can't erase. You said forever, but the time moved fast. Now I'm holding on to dreams that couldn't last. I keep replaying all the things we said. Every I love you still inside my head. If love was a fire, you lit it in me, burning through the dark so endlessly. Even if you're gone, you still play your part. Baby, I'll wait for my heart. You found your peace, I found my pain. Two souls dancing in the summer rain. Maybe someday when the stars align, you'll find your way back to being mine. I keep replaying all the things we said. Every I miss you echoes where you slept. If love was a fire, you lit it in me, burning through the dark so endlessly. Even if you're gone, you still play your part. Baby, I'll wait for my heart. No, we can't be friends, I know it's true, but every song I write still calls for you. If loving you's a sin I can't defend, then let me fall for you again. If love was a fire, you lit it in me, still burning strong, it won't set me free. Even if it tears my world apart, baby, I'll wait, I'll wait, I'll wait for my heart. I'll wait for my heart.
When the night falls, I see the stars above, but none shine brighter than your love. Every whisper, every touch so true, feels like magic when I'm close to you. I was lost before, drifting with the tide. Then you held my hand, pulled me to your side. Oh, love in your eyes, a spark that never fades, like the moonlight dancing on the waves. With you my heart is free, you're the only home I'll ever need. Through the storms and through the endless rain, you're the sunshine calling out my name. Every heartbeat, every word you say keeps me safe, never drifts away. I was lost before, drifting with the tide. Then you held my hand, pulled me to your side. Oh, love in your eyes, a spark that never fades, like the moonlight dancing on the waves. With you my heart is free, you're the only home I'll ever need. No more lonely nights, no more empty days. You and I together, love will light the way. So hold me close, never let me go. With you I found the love I've always known.
a song I'd never known, every glance like a verse I'd always longed for. And suddenly I wasn't alone. We're stargazing in the silence. Your heartbeat is my favorite sound. No past, no pain, just this moment where love is the only vow. It's only us tonight, no need for tomorrow. You're my spark in the dark, my peace in the sorrow. If the world ends now, I'll be alright, as long as I'm holding you tight. Only us tonight. You don't need to promise me forever, just whisper truth in the quiet of the night. Even if we're flying without a tether, this love is our fearless flight. Like a movie scene that's never fading, your eyes keep rewriting my fate. Every kiss feels like the beginning of a life I was born to create. It's only us tonight, no dreams to borrow. You're my always now, my sweet tomorrow. If the stars fall down from the sky, I'd still believe in love's light. Only us tonight. Let the world keep turning, let the rain keep burning. In your arms I found a place where I am bound. Only us tonight, no fears, no ending. In your love I find my soul ascending. Even if this is our last flight, I choose you again every time. Only us tonight.
Never thought I'd find a love so true, like the stars that shine just for me and you. Every heartbeat whispers your name, a love so deep it won't ever fade. Through every storm, through every fight, you're my calm, my guiding light. No matter where, no matter when, I'll choose you over and over again. I'm endlessly yours, forever and more. Through every open door, you're what I'm living for. No distance too far, no time can erase the way that you love me, the way that we stay. Even when the world feels cold and gray, your touch turns the night into golden days. You're the melody in my sweetest song. With you, my heart is found where it belongs. Through every storm, through every fight, you're my calm, my guiding light. No matter where, no matter when, I'll choose you over and forever and more. With you in my arms, I don't need anything more. I never believed in perfect timing or love that comes too soon. I learned to keep my distance, 'cause falling always hurts the truth. But you walked in so quietly. No promises, no games, just stayed when I got distant. Said my name like it meant something. You don't ask me for my past or who I'm trying to be. You see me right here, right now, like that's enough for you and me. Somewhere between my heart and you, I stopped pretending I was strong. Somewhere between the words we lose, I finally felt I belong. It's not fire lighting up the sky, it's breathing easy for the first time. Somewhere between my heart and you, I found a place called home. We talk until the night feels lighter, about nothing, about scars. Your laughter feels like shelter from everything we are. I don't need you to save me or promise forevermore. Just stay when things get heavy, that's what love is for. When my doubts start closing in, you don't tell me they're wrong. You let me feel them, let them fade like they didn't belong. Somewhere between my heart and you, I stopped running from the truth. Somewhere between your honesty and everything I never knew. It's not about written in stone, it's choosing you when I'm unsure. Somewhere between my heart and you, I found something real. If love is only moments, then let this one be slow. No future drawn in outlines, just the now we both know. If the world starts pulling us apart, if we lose our way somehow, I'll still choose where we are, right here, right now. Somewhere between my heart and you, I lay my defenses down. No fear left to prove, no reason left to doubt. It's not loud, it's not perfect, it's your name in my plans. Somewhere between my heart and you, I chose to stay. If love has a sound, is this quiet, honest, true? Somewhere between my heart and